Hello, everyone. And as you can see in your agenda, I am indeed not Jean-Jacques Barberis. He shares his apologies. He's unfortunately affected by the COVID. But I will try to do my best to replace him and to share our thoughts on the topic of building resiliency in emerging markets. And actually, because I'm replacing Jean-Jacques, I like to tweak a bit the title because it's something I'm allowed to do. It's about building resiliency in emerging markets through sustainable capital market development. And I'll try to cover quickly in the 10 minutes or so we have between now and your lunch why it matters, and also outlining some of the solutions we've been working on thanks to our investors, partners, and some development finance institutions. So why it matters? As you all know, the economic consequences of the COVID-19 have disproportionately affected the socioeconomic outlook of emerging markets. That's a given and there is no debate. Economies will, to a large extent, continue to be or need to be rebuilt. And the thing is, a bit like in Europe nowadays, this can go either way. As much as there is a debate between the fin du mois, this is a French saying, and it basically means the power purchase you have at the end of the month once you've paid all your bills. And there is a tension between fin du mois and the fin du monde, which means the world end. It's basically a reference to climate change and the kind of systemic risk we're facing. And this tension is very, very important and vivid in Europe. We've seen that in France, but we will experience more of that all across the EU. Think about that tension in emerging markets. And this is why this topic is so critical. There has been a divergent path between advanced economies and EM when facing the COVID-19 crisis. EM economies have been affected because they are less resilient. Their social system is less resilient. Their health system, social security, insurance systems are less resilient, and they've been harder hit by the crisis. Putting some figures on the magnitude of the population at risk, we estimate that there are 207 million of people at risk of extreme poverty due to the COVID shock and the long-term impact of the crisis. That comes on top of the 130 million that may fall into poverty because of climate change, and the 200 million additional peoples that may have to migrate because of the direct consequences of climate change. So if you do the math, you end up with 500 million people, which between now and 2030 are at risk to fall back into poverty. That's 50% of the 1 billion people that made it out of poverty in the context of the achievement of the Millennial Development Goals. So this is highly significant. In terms of stress on the public finance of emerging markets, and that explains why we need to develop resilient capital markets, of course, the sovereign debt of emerging market countries has increased up to 65%. For an emerging market investor looking at counterparty risk, this is significant. Developing economies are expected to lose an additional 220 billion in income in the coming years, and the path to recovery will be much longer than in Europe. It is estimated to be between 3 and 5 years. On the health front, I will not come back to that, but you all know that the rolling out of vaccines takes too long compared to what we have experienced in Europe. So, of course, investment is now more than ever challenging because of this macro environment, increased counterparty risk, and so on and so forth. But it is now more than ever needed for the same reasons. And that's the kind of conundrum that we have to address. So massive investment are needed. That was the case before the crisis, and that's still the case now, especially after Glasgow. So why EM matter in the greater scheme of things, taking stock of what happened in Glasgow? Because net zero goal can only be understood at the global level. EM matter because your iPhone, your electric scooters, your clothes are usually manufactured one way or another in emerging markets. And we have to realize in developed markets that at the end of the day, CO2 emissions are embedded in international trade throughout the value chains. Just to give you some a nice figure on the French market or the French situation, national emissions amounted to roughly 750 million tons of CO2 before the COVID crisis. 40% of those emissions were actually imported. Imported from where? From emerging markets. I haven't had time to check the figures in the Dutch context, but you can presume it's more or less the same order of magnitude. And this is something that really we need to realize. Tackling climate change is not only realizing energy transition in the EU, it's also looking at your entire value chain and the interdependencies that we've built to develop our economies. EM matters as well because growth in modern history has been coupled with increase in CO2 emissions. Look at the distribution of the global middle class. 2/3 of global middle class now live in emerging markets. And the internal demand, which is growing, now fuels a carbon-intensive growth. This is something that we need to address. We need to decouple growth and rise in carbon intensity in emerging markets. And that explains why the IEA has made clear that we needed to grow significantly the investment flowing into clean energy in emerging markets, sevenfold, from roughly 150 millions to about 1 trillion every year. How can this be achieved? Through public finance? Perhaps. Through private debt and private equity? Yes, they will contribute. Will it be enough? Not sure. And this is why we think capital market instruments are also needed to support that transition. Clearly, the surge in issuance of sustainable bonds, green bonds, sustainability-linked bonds has been significant over the past few years. We have now reached a size of about $240 billion of outstanding issuance in those instruments that play a role in supporting the transitions that we need to see happening on the ground. Having said that, and even though it's been a great success story, we need to go faster, we need to go stronger, notably expanding what has happened with a focus on green markets to social and sustainable bond markets. Because if the transition is to happen, it's going to be inclusive, or it will not happen, especially in emerging markets. And it needs to be also better, meaning that we need to focus on instruments which embed a significant level of additionality and transparency that will be critical. In that regard, blended finance can be an effective solution to channel more private investment into sustainable recovery. It matters from an investment standpoint because if you are an impact investor, at the end of the day, you also want to optimize the value for money in terms of additionality. And if you look at avoiding a ton of CO2 emission, in emerging markets, it costs half as much as in developed markets. This is because in those markets, you can leapfrog, and because there are this very carbon-intensive growth regime that we have to tackle. But the reality is that there is still a lack of capital available. EM currently accounts for 1/5 of global investment in clean energy, even though they represent 2/3 of the world population. Emerging markets, for investors, face debt and equity costs that are up to 7 times higher than in the US and in Europe. And for investors, there is a lack of suitable opportunities. Investing at scale in the current macro context and in the specific also financial infrastructure context that investors have been facing over the past few years remains a challenge. Most private investors are not able to conduct a precise analysis of the risk involved. They will overprice the risk due to asymmetry of information. It's very likely that they will decline opportunities because of the legal frameworks that we need to solve. Looking at public finance alone, it will probably not be sufficient, just because the shock that we've been facing has been a significant strain on the financial resources that emerging market actors have, as well as developed market DFIs. So blended finance is a go-to solution to leverage the scarce public capital to de-risk private investment and channel more private money into those markets. And now looking at private market, as I said, private equity and private debt solution will not be enough to deploy 1 trillion per year. That's a given. So we need to support project sponsors, local financial institutions, local corporates, so to make sure that they can tap capital market on top of the traditional financing solutions that we see in those markets. What are the successful solutions or models that we see in terms of PPP? Amundi has been lucky enough to be selected by the International Finance Corporation to develop a new approach to sustainable capital market development, focusing on both sides of the equation when you want to start a market. Very often you create a fund and there is demand, but supply is lacking. Or it's the other way around. You have technical assistance facility, but there is no demand in front of that. And so the IFC engineers and project manager envisage a way that would really tackle the two sides of the equation at the same time. It's been, to a large extent, a great success, and we think we now have a proof of concept that holistic approaches featuring a de-risking mechanism to increase investors' mobilization to tackle the demand side work. We've raised more than 1.4 billion, so that's significant money at work. And a technical assistance program to spur issuances, tackling the supply side, work as well. A few additional figures. The fund so far has invested into 30 green bonds from 13 countries, and there has been 17 first-time issuances linked to that program. In terms of exposure to financial institutions, that single program has exposure to more than a quarter of all green bond issuers in emerging markets outside China. So if you develop the right model with the backing of institutional investors and the support of development financial institutions, this can have a very significant impact in the development of sustainable capital markets. To tackle the COVID-19 crisis and then continue expanding those markets to make sure that we address the different dimensions we need to address to build resilient markets, we launched a new program back in November with the IFC again, called Build Back Better, Emerging Market Sustainable Transaction. Sorry, the acronym is best to remember that. But it's the same approach, this time with a focus on social, sustainability-linked bonds and sustainability bonds. And once again, we believe it's very, very important whenever we engage emerging market participants to be very clear on the fact that whether you talk green or social, the two topics are intertwined, because one cannot go without the other in the long run. So to conclude, of course, COVID-19 has inflicted a very high cost on emerging markets and developing economies, increasing poverty, slowing economic growth, and limiting government's ability to set the foundation for a sustainable growth. Having said that, we are now in a world where there are unprecedented commitments to sustainable finance, and we have instruments that can be used by market participants in the form of sustainable capital markets. That's key if we want to deploy money at scale. So our conviction at Amundi is that through well-designed investment program, with intention, with measure, with additionality, one can make a difference through impact finance, even though it's not necessarily always associated with capital market, but more associated with private market. We believe we need actually both. So to conclude really now, I'd like to, I hope it's been interesting enough, and sorry for Jean-Jacques once again. And I'd like simply to extend my congratulations to the organizer. I've been lucky to be invited over the past few years, and I know this event is quite unique in Europe. But perhaps more importantly, I'd like to extend my congratulations to the participants. Because I know by experience that designing impact program is tough. You have to deal with dozens of different parameters while ending with a product that will be a good fit for investors' needs or constraints. So that's something that we need to achieve collectively. But this is clearly the area which is, of course, the most impactful. Huh? We have it in the name, but where we can really leverage the transformative power of finance, and that is critical. Thank you all.